I've been a public school speech-language pathologist and university professor for over 40 years. Now, this math is a little problematic because I can assure you I am not a day over 35. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. I'm here to invite you into my world and to share my concerns about what I see phones and other devices doing to our children. I'm also going to propose some simple solutions. I've devoted my entire career to helping parents boost their children's speech, language, and literacy skills. I'm also a mom, and I know that all of us love our kids and want what's best for them. But here's the harsh reality. Our phones have become a serious barrier to connecting with our children and loving them the way that they should. However, phones can be a very great blessing in many ways, right? But if we're not careful, our phones can become a pipeline to prison. Now, odds are that our kids aren't actually going to go to prison, but I am here to passionately advocate for the fact that ignoring our children for our phones is hurting their futures and limiting their potential opportunities. I want to give you several pieces of data, science, that illustrates the extent of this problem. In the last few years, the number of infants and young children with speech and language delays has more than doubled worldwide. Addiction to phones has become such an epidemic, and it's created an epidemic of children right here as we speak who aren't talking. And the reason they're not talking is that when they try to talk, we're on our phones, scrolling and ignoring them, so they stop trying. And this leads to delayed spoken or verbal language skills. A few years ago, I was speaking at an international conference in Las Vegas. At lunch one day, I noticed a family nearby. Both mom and dad were on their phones. The little boy in the high chair had dropped his paper and crayons on the floor. After about his 8th attempt to get one of them to retrieve them for him, his mom looked up from her phone. She glanced impatiently at the floor and said, "You'll be okay," and went right back to scrolling. What did that child learn? He learned that his attempts to communicate didn't work. He learned that the phones in his parents' hands were more deserving of his attention than he was. His situation is not unique. An expert tells us that the average American adult checks our phone 58 times a day. A large scientific study put out by the Journal of the American Medical Association showed that for every 1 additional minute of screen time on our part, our children are making fewer vocalizations, hearing fewer words, and having limited back and forth interactions. This is leading to low spoken language, low reading, and low writing skills. It's making our children vulnerable to being bullied, struggling in school, and having trouble making friends. One of the statistics that's most striking to me is that today, the average American, or 33% of Americans, read below the 3rd grade level. The Governor's Early Literacy Foundation tells us that children who end 4th grade, reading below grade level, are extremely vulnerable to incarceration. Imagine this number swelling by 30% or more in terms of kids who are vulnerable to incarceration. What we're doing is creating a potential generation of adults in 2050 whose verbal and literacy skills are so low that we're going to see a huge rise in the crimes, in people committing crimes and being incarcerated. It's going to get much, much worse. We are sitting on a ticking time bomb. It will explode, and all of us will be impacted by it. I've been so concerned about this that I have coined this term, the pipeline to prison. But most importantly, I've developed a plan to disrupt it. My goal is to empower parents to love and be closer to their children through a simple formula that I've created. Love, talk, read. Love our children with time, attention, and affection. Talk with our children as much as possible. Read with them daily, or tell stories. Research is conclusive out of both the US and Sweden that when our children initiate communication, respond as soon as possible. The faster we respond, the faster our children's language skills will grow and get better. A 66-year-old friend of mine, Mary, adopted her 2-year-old grandson, Brian, last year. Brian's language was seriously delayed. A child who's 2 years old should be saying 200 to 300 words. Brian didn't talk at all. He had serious emotional trauma and was terrified of being abandoned. But Mary dug deep and gave Brian all the love and affection that she was capable of. When he initiated communication, she responded right away. She talked with him constantly and read with him daily. Today, at the age of 3, 1 year later, Brian is a happy, secure preschooler. He has friends, and most importantly, his language is actually above age level. Mary didn't have to be rich or young or have all the answers figured out in order to completely change the trajectory of Brian's life. And neither do we. But what we need to do is make a firm decision that whatever is popping up on our phone, that text, that TikTok video, that bargain on Amazon, it can wait. Let's not just be in the room with our children. Let's be in their lives. So what I've done now is to realize that as parents, we don't need to be perfect, but we do need to be present. I'd like to share with you a couple of very easy techniques to build our children's speech and language skills. These are so easy to incorporate into our daily routine, and they can be used by anyone, anywhere, in any language. Use verbal extensions with our children. When they talk, add words. So our child goes doggy, and we go, oh yeah, look at that big black doggy barking and wagging his tail. Extensions work wonders for building children's spoken language skills. And again, anybody can use them. Read with our children daily. Paper books are best. And if we don't read, it's just as effective to talk about pictures in the books or tell stories. My son Mark had severe dyslexia when he was a little boy, and he hated to read because reading was so hard for him. But he loved it when he crawled on my lap and I held him close and read aloud to him daily. He loved funny books, but his favorite was Walter the Farting Dog. I was so desperate for Mark to enjoy reading that I even got the squeeze toy. And I want to thank the wonderful staff and crew at Folsom TEDx because they're allowing me to squeeze Walter into the microphone. And I'm going to do this because I refuse to grow up. So strap yourselves in. One more. Oh, I couldn't resist. Like I said, I refused to grow up. I am convinced that this made all the difference. Mark went from almost failing kindergarten to getting a Master of Philosophy degree at the University of Oxford in England. I'm convinced that love, talk, read really does work because I've seen it work over and over and over again, beginning with my own child. And it can work for you too. With these 3 simple steps of love, talk, read, and powering off our phones for a while each day, we can radically disrupt that phone to prison pipeline. We can create a generation of happy, successful adults in 2050. I'd like to close with my favorite quote by Mahatma Gandhi, who once said, "If we want to change the world, if we truly want to change the world, we must begin with the children." Thank you so much. Thank you, sweetie.